There is a book that was hidden from the world for thousands of years. This book contains secrets that were too dangerous to share. It tells stories about angels who fell from heaven. It speaks of visions that show the future of our world. This book is called the Book of Enoch. Many people do not know about this ancient book. It was written long before Jesus was born. Some say it was written before Noah built his ark. The book tells the story of a man named Enoch who walked with God. Enoch saw things that no other human was allowed to see. He traveled to heaven while he was still alive. He met angels and learned their secrets. Today, in the year 2024, strange things are happening all around us. The weather is getting worse. Wars are breaking out everywhere. People are scared and confused. Natural disasters are destroying cities. The sky looks different than it used to. Many people feel like something big is about to happen. What if these events were predicted thousands of years ago? What if Enoch saw our time and wrote down what would happen? What if the answers to our questions are hidden in this ancient book that most people have never read? The Book of Enoch is not like other books. It does not tell simple stories. It reveals secrets about the spiritual world. It explains why bad things happen on earth. It shows us the battle between good and evil that most people cannot see. Most importantly, it gives us warnings about the end times. Long ago, religious leaders decided not to include the Book of Enoch in the Bible. They said it was too strange. They worried that people would be scared by what it said. But the book never disappeared completely. It was kept safe in Ethiopia for hundreds of years. Finally, in modern times, scholars translated it so everyone could read it. When you read the Book of Enoch, you will discover amazing things. You will learn about giants who once lived on earth. You will read about angels who taught humans dangerous knowledge. You will see visions of the future that match what is happening right now in 2024. You will understand why the world seems to be falling apart. This is not just another story from long ago. This is a warning for our time. The events that Enoch saw in his visions are happening now. The signs he described are all around us. The prophecies he wrote down are coming true. We are living in the days that Enoch warned us about. Some people think the Book of Enoch is just made-up stories. But when you see how perfectly it describes our modern world, you will know it is real. When you understand how it connects to events happening right now, you will be amazed. When you realize that Enoch saw our time thousands of years ago, you will never look at the world the same way again. The question is not whether these prophecies are real. The question is whether we are brave enough to learn what they mean. Are we ready to discover what Enoch saw about our future? Are we prepared to understand why these things are happening? Are we willing to know what comes next? In this journey through the Book of Enoch, we will explore the most shocking prophecies ever written. We will see how they connect to events happening in 2024. We will learn about the spiritual forces that control our world. We will discover what the future holds for humanity. Most importantly, we will understand what we must do to prepare. The story begins with a man who was so close to God that he never died. Instead, God took him up to heaven while he was still alive. This man saw things that would not happen for thousands of years. He wrote them down so that future generations would be warned. That future generation is us. The time he wrote about is now. Chapter 2. The Man Who Never Died. Long before the great flood covered the earth, there lived a man named Enoch. He was not like other men of his time. While others lived for themselves, Enoch walked with God. While others forgot about their Creator, Enoch spent every day talking with the Almighty. He was so righteous that God decided to give him a special gift. The Bible tells us that Enoch lived for 365 years. But unlike every other person who has ever lived, Enoch did not die. One day, God simply took him up to heaven. The Bible says that God took him because he pleased the Lord so much. Enoch became one of only 2 people in history who went to heaven without dying. But Enoch's story does not end there. While he was in heaven, God showed him incredible visions. Enoch saw the past, the present, and the future. He learned about the creation of the world. He discovered secrets about angels and demons. He witnessed events that would happen thousands of years in the future. God commanded him to write down everything he saw. The Book of Enoch is Enoch's record of these heavenly visions. It contains knowledge that was too advanced for people in ancient times. It reveals truths about the spiritual world that most humans are not ready to understand. It describes future events with such detail that it seems impossible that someone could have known about them so long ago. When Enoch was taken to heaven, he met the archangels. These are the most powerful angels who serve directly under God. They showed him the heavenly realms. They explained how the universe works. They taught him about the laws that govern both the physical and spiritual worlds. They revealed to him the plan that God has for humanity. The archangels also showed Enoch something terrible. They showed him how some angels had rebelled against God. These fallen angels, called the Watchers, had come down to earth. They had married human women and taught humans things they were not supposed to know. Because of this, the world had become filled with violence and evil. Enoch learned that God was going to judge the world because of what the fallen angels had done. He saw the great flood that would destroy almost all life on earth. But he also saw that God would preserve a righteous remnant. Through Noah and his family, humanity would get a new beginning. The visions did not stop there. Enoch saw far into the future. He saw empires rise and fall. He witnessed wars and disasters. He observed the coming of the Messiah. He watched the end times unfold. All of this was shown to him while he stood in the presence of God himself. For many centuries, the Book of Enoch was considered very important. Early Christians read it and quoted from it. Even the New Testament contains references to things that Enoch wrote. The Book of Jude specifically mentions a prophecy that Enoch made about the Lord coming with his holy ones to judge the earth. Jewish rabbis also studied the Book of Enoch carefully. They saw it as a valuable source of information about the spiritual world. They used it to understand difficult passages in other parts of the Bible. They recognized that Enoch had received revelations that were not available anywhere else. However, as time passed, Some religious leaders became uncomfortable with the book. They thought it was too mysterious. They worried that it might confuse people or lead them astray. By the 4th century, most Christian churches had decided not to include it in the official Bible. The book began to disappear from most parts of the world, but God made sure that the Book of Enoch would not be lost forever. In the mountains of Ethiopia, Christian monks kept copies of the book safe. They continued to read it and study it. They understood that it contained important truths that the world needed to know. For over 1,000 years, they protected this ancient wisdom. In the 1700s, European explorers discovered that the Book of Enoch still existed in Ethiopia. They brought copies back to their own countries. Scholars began to translate it into modern languages. Finally, after being hidden for centuries, the world could read Enoch's visions again. When people began to study the Book of Enoch in modern times, they were amazed by what they found. The book described things that seemed to match scientific discoveries. It talked about astronomy in ways that ancient people should not have known. It explained natural phenomena that were not understood until recent centuries. Even more shocking was how the book seemed to predict modern events. Wars, natural disasters, social problems, and spiritual conflicts that Enoch described sounded exactly like things happening in our world today. It became clear that Enoch had not just seen the ancient past, he had seen our time as well. The Book of Enoch contains 108 chapters, divided into 5 main sections. Each section reveals different aspects of God's plan for the world. Some parts focus on the fallen angels and their punishment. Other parts describe the end times and God's final judgment. Still other sections explain the rewards that await the righteous. What makes the book so powerful is how it connects the spiritual and physical worlds. Enoch shows us that everything happening on earth is connected to battles taking place in heaven. He explains that natural disasters often have spiritual causes. He reveals that human history is really the story of a cosmic war between good and evil. Today, as we face unprecedented challenges in 2024, the Book of Enoch offers us crucial insights. It helps us understand why our world seems to be falling apart. It explains the spiritual forces behind current events. It warns us about what is coming next. Most importantly, it shows us how we can prepare for the difficult times ahead. Chapter 3: When Angels Fell from Heaven. The most shocking story in the Book of Enoch is about angels who left heaven and came to earth. These were not ordinary angels. They were called the Watchers because their job was to watch over humanity and report back to God. But instead of staying in heaven where they belonged, they decided to rebel against their Creator. According to Enoch, 200 of these Watchers came down to Mount Hermon. This mountain is located in the area that is now between Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. The Watchers made a pact with each other. They swore an oath that they would all stick together in their rebellion. They knew that what they were planning would make God very angry. The leader of these fallen angels was named Semjaza. Under his command were other powerful angels with names like Azazel, Barakijal, and Kokabel. Each of these angels had special knowledge and abilities that were meant to be used only in heaven. but they decided to share this forbidden knowledge with humans. The first thing the Watchers did was take human women as wives. This was something that was never supposed to happen. Angels and humans were created differently and were not meant to marry each other. But the Watchers did not care about God's rules. They chose the most beautiful women they could find and married them. The children that were born from these marriages were not normal humans. They were giants, called the Nephilim. These giants were much larger and stronger than regular people. They were also more violent and cruel. The giants began to terrorize the earth. They ate so much food that there was not enough left for regular humans. When the food ran out, the giants began eating people. But the Watchers did something even worse than creating giants. They began teaching humans knowledge that they were not ready to handle. Azazel taught men how to make weapons of war. He showed them how to make swords, knives, shields, and armor. Before this, humans had lived in peace. Now they began fighting wars against each other. Other fallen angels taught humans different kinds of forbidden knowledge. Some taught them about astrology and how to read the stars to predict the future. Others taught them about magic and sorcery. Still others showed them how to make cosmetics and jewelry that would make them vain and proud. All of this knowledge corrupted humanity. Barakijal taught humans about astrology. Kokabel taught them about the constellations. Ezekiel taught them about clouds and weather. Arakiel taught them about the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught them about the signs of the sun. Sariel taught them about the course of the moon. Each angel shared knowledge that was meant to remain in heaven. As this forbidden knowledge spread, the earth became filled with violence and evil. People began worshipping false gods instead of the one true God. They started practicing magic and trying to contact evil spirits. They became obsessed with war and began killing each other constantly. The world that God had created as good became a place of darkness and terror. The worst part was that humans began to forget about God completely. They thought they were so smart because of what the fallen angels had taught them. They believed they did not need their Creator anymore. They started living only for themselves and stopped caring about right and wrong. Sin spread like a disease until almost everyone on earth was corrupted. When God saw what was happening, he was filled with grief and anger. The beautiful world he had created was being destroyed. The humans he loved were being led astray by rebellious angels. The giants were terrorizing innocent people. Something had to be done to stop this evil from spreading further. God called upon his faithful archangels to take action. He sent Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel to deal with the crisis. Each of these archangels was given a specific mission to help restore order to the earth and punish those who had rebelled against heaven. The archangel Gabriel was told to destroy the giants and the children of the Watchers. These hybrid beings were an abomination that could not be allowed to continue existing. They were causing too much harm and spreading too much evil. Gabriel was commanded to turn them against each other so they would destroy themselves in battle. The archangel Michael was given the task of punishing Semjaza and his followers. These fallen angels would be bound in chains and imprisoned in dark places under the earth. They would remain there until the day of final judgment, when they would face their ultimate punishment. Their rebellion would not go unpunished. The archangel Raphael was ordered to bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into the wilderness. Azazel was to be thrown into a pit in the desert and covered with sharp rocks. He would remain there in darkness until the day when he would be thrown into the fire of hell. His punishment would be severe because he had taught humans how to make weapons of war. The archangel Uriel was sent to warn Noah about the coming flood. Since almost all of humanity had become corrupted, God decided to start over with a righteous man and his family. Noah would build an ark and save representatives of all the animals. After the flood destroyed the wicked world, Noah's descendants would repopulate the earth. Enoch was given a special role in this cosmic drama. God told him to go to the fallen angels and announce their punishment. Enoch had to tell Semjaza and his followers that they would never be forgiven for what they had done. They would be imprisoned until the final judgment, and then they would be thrown into eternal fire. When Enoch delivered this message, the fallen angels were terrified. They begged him to write a petition asking God to have mercy on them. They promised they would never rebel again if God would forgive them. But when Enoch presented their petition to God, the answer was no. Their rebellion was too serious to be forgiven. The story of the Watchers explains why there is so much evil in our world today. The knowledge they taught humans is still being used for harmful purposes. The spirits of the giants they created still roam the earth as demons, causing trouble and tempting people to sin. The rebellion they started continues to influence human society. When we look at the world in 2024, we can see the legacy of what the Watchers did. Wars still rage across the earth, using weapons that are more deadly than ever before. People still practice magic and occult rituals. Astrology and fortune-telling are more popular than ever. Many people have turned away from God and live only for themselves. The technology that seems so advanced in our modern world may actually be connected to the forbidden knowledge that the Watchers shared. The rapid advancement of science and technology in recent centuries might be the result of spiritual forces working behind the scenes. What we think of as progress might actually be leading us toward the same kind of corruption that existed before the flood. According to Enoch, the influence of the fallen angels will continue until the end times. Then, just as happened in Noah's day, God will judge the earth again. The difference is that next time, the judgment will be by fire instead of water. Those who have remained faithful to God will be saved, but those who have followed the ways of the Watchers will be destroyed. This ancient story is not just history, it is a warning for our time. The same spiritual forces that corrupted the world before the flood are still active today. The same choice between good and evil that faced humanity in Enoch's time still faces us now. We must decide whether we will follow God or follow the path of rebellion that the Watchers started. Chapter 4: Visions of Tomorrow. When Enoch was taken up to heaven, God did not just show him what was happening in his own time. The Almighty opened up the future like a scroll and let Enoch see events that would not happen for thousands of years. These visions were so detailed and so clear that Enoch could describe them as if he was watching them happen right in front of him. One of the most amazing things about Enoch's visions is how they seem to describe our modern world. He saw flying machines that could carry people through the sky. He witnessed wars, fought with weapons that could destroy entire cities in an instant. He observed people communicating with others who were far away, as if they were speaking face to face. All of these things seemed impossible in ancient times, but they are normal parts of life in 2024. Enoch saw a time when knowledge would increase rapidly. He witnessed humans discovering the secrets of the earth and the heavens. He watched as people learned to harness the power of lightning and use it to do amazing things. He saw them building great machines and structures that reached toward the sky. In many ways, his visions perfectly describe the scientific and technological revolution of the modern age. But Enoch also saw the dark side of this advancement. He witnessed how the increase in knowledge would lead to an increase in evil. People would use their new abilities to create more powerful weapons. They would develop ways to spy on each other and control each other. The same technology that could do good would also be used to do great harm. In his visions, Enoch saw a time when people would worship their own intelligence instead of God. They would think they were so smart that they did not need their Creator anymore. They would try to solve all their problems through science and technology, forgetting that true wisdom comes from heaven. This pride would lead them into great danger. Enoch saw societies where people lived for pleasure and forgot about their spiritual needs. He witnessed generations that rejected the teachings of their ancestors and made up their own rules about right and wrong. He observed how families would break apart and children would rebel against their parents. Traditional values would be abandoned and chaos would result. The ancient prophets saw a time when the weather would become very strange and unpredictable. He witnessed droughts in some places and floods in others. He saw storms that were more powerful than any that had come before. He observed how the seasons would become confused, with winter coming when summer should be there, and spring arriving at the wrong time. Enoch's visions showed him earthquakes that would shake the foundations of the earth. He saw mountains crumbling and islands disappearing into the sea. He witnessed fires that would burn for days and destroy vast areas of land. He observed how the very ground would crack open and swallow cities. These natural disasters would become more frequent and more severe as time went on. In his prophetic visions, Enoch saw a time when nation would rise against nation. Wars would break out all over the earth, and there would be no peace anywhere. These conflicts would be more terrible than any wars that had ever been fought before. The weapons used would be so powerful that they could end all life on the planet if they were not controlled. Enoch also saw great changes in society and culture. He witnessed a time when people would become very selfish and only care about themselves. Love would grow cold, and people would betray each other for money or power. trust would become rare, and everyone would be suspicious of everyone else. Communities that had been peaceful for generations would be torn apart by conflict. The visions showed Enoch how communication would change dramatically. He saw people sending messages instantly across great distances. He witnessed individuals talking to others they could not see, as if spirits were carrying their words. He observed how information would spread around the world in moments, but much of this information would be false and designed to deceive people. Enoch saw a time when travel would become very easy and fast. People would move around the earth as easily as they once moved around their own villages. Great numbers of people would leave their homelands and settle in foreign countries. This mixing of peoples would create both opportunities and problems that the world had never seen before. In his visions of the future, Enoch witnessed the rise of great cities that were larger than anything that existed in his time. These cities would house millions of people and stretch as far as the eye could see. But many of these urban centers would become places of crime and corruption. The people living in them would often be lonely and unhappy, despite being surrounded by so many others. Enoch saw how money and material possessions would become more important to people than relationships and spiritual values. He witnessed societies where everything was bought and sold, even things that should never be for sale. The gap between rich and poor would become enormous, leading to anger and violence. The ancient prophets' visions revealed a time when entertainment would become a major focus of human activity. People would spend enormous amounts of time watching others perform instead of living their own lives. Much of this entertainment would be violent or immoral, gradually corrupting the minds and hearts of those who consumed it. Enoch saw how education would change dramatically. Knowledge would become widely available, but wisdom would become rare. People would learn many facts, but would not understand how to live good lives. Schools would teach students what to think, but not how to think. The most important questions about life and purpose would be ignored. In his prophetic visions, Enoch witnessed the rise of false teachers who would lead many people astray. These teachers would claim to have new revelations that contradicted the ancient truths. They would promise easy solutions to difficult problems. They would tell people what they wanted to hear instead of what they needed to know. Enoch saw a time when traditional marriage and family structures would be attacked and weakened. Relationships that God had designed to be permanent would become temporary. Children would grow up without the guidance and protection that stable families provide. Society would suffer as these fundamental institutions broke down. The visions showed Enoch how religion would change in the future. Many people would abandon faith altogether and become atheists. Others would create new religions that mixed truth with error. Even traditional faiths would be corrupted by false teachings and worldly influences. True believers would become a minority in many places. Enoch witnessed the rise of global institutions and organizations that would try to unite the world under one system. While this might seem like a good idea, these attempts at unity would actually lead to tyranny and oppression. Freedom would be sacrificed in the name of security and efficiency. In his visions of the end times, Enoch saw how all these trends would come together in a great crisis. The problems that had been building for centuries would reach a breaking point. Natural disasters, wars, economic collapse, and social chaos would all happen at the same time. It would seem like the world was ending, and in many ways it would be. But Enoch's visions did not end with destruction and despair. He also saw hope beyond the darkness. After the Great Tribulation, he witnessed the arrival of God's kingdom on earth. The righteous would be rewarded, and the wicked would be punished. A new age of peace and prosperity would begin, lasting forever. These visions that Enoch received thousands of years ago are remarkable in how accurately they seem to describe our world in 2024. The technological advances, social changes, natural disasters, and spiritual conflicts he witnessed are all happening around us today. This suggests that we are living in the time period that Enoch saw in his prophetic visions. Chapter 5. Signs. Written in the stars. When Enoch was taken up to heaven, one of the most amazing things he learned about was how God uses the sun, moon, and stars to communicate with humanity. The heavenly bodies are not just beautiful decorations in the sky. They are actually a cosmic calendar and message board that God designed to tell us about important events that would happen on Earth. In ancient times, people understood this much better than we do today. They watched the sky carefully and knew that unusual things happening up there meant that significant events were about to happen down here. When stars appeared in strange places, when the moon looked different, or when the sun behaved unusually, they knew these were signs from God. Enoch learned from the angels about the regular movements of the heavenly bodies. He was taught how the sun travels across the sky in a yearly cycle, creating the seasons. He learned about the phases of the moon and how they mark the passage of months. He discovered how the stars move in predictable patterns that can be used to measure time and navigate across long distances. But Enoch also learned about special times when the heavenly bodies would do things that were not part of their normal patterns. These unusual events would be signs that God was about to do something important on Earth. The angels taught him how to recognize these signs and understand what they meant. One of the most important things Enoch learned was about eclipses. When the moon passes between the Earth and the sun, it creates a solar eclipse. When the Earth passes between the sun and the moon, it creates a lunar eclipse. These events happen regularly, but they are still dramatic reminders of God's power over the heavens. Enoch saw in his visions that eclipses would often occur at times when God was about to judge nations or bring about major changes in the world. A solar eclipse might signal the fall of a king or the end of an empire. A lunar eclipse might warn of coming disasters or wars. The timing and location of these eclipses would give clues about what was going to happen. The ancient prophet also learned about comets and meteors. These are visitors from the outer parts of our solar system that occasionally come close to Earth. When they do, they can put on spectacular shows in the night sky. Enoch was taught that these celestial visitors often appeared at times of great significance in human history. In his visions of the future, Enoch saw many unusual things happening in the heavens. He witnessed times when the sun would be darkened and the moon would not give its light. He saw stars falling from the sky like rain. He observed strange lights and colors appearing in the atmosphere. All of these would be signs that the end times were approaching. Enoch also saw how humans in the future would develop great skill in studying the heavens. They would build powerful instruments to look at distant stars and planets. They would discover that the universe was much larger and more complex than anyone in ancient times had imagined. But along with this knowledge would come both wonder and fear. The prophet witnessed how some people would use their knowledge of the stars for good purposes. They would use it to navigate across oceans and to predict the weather. They would study the movements of the planets to create accurate calendars. This knowledge would help humanity in many practical ways. But Enoch also saw how others would misuse astronomical knowledge. They would try to use the stars to predict the future in ways that God had not intended. They would worship the heavenly bodies instead of the God who created them. They would believe that the stars controlled their destinies instead of trusting in divine providence. In the year 2024, we are seeing many of the celestial signs that Enoch described in his visions. There have been several significant eclipses that have passed over important areas of the earth. These eclipses have occurred at times when major political and social changes were taking place, just as Enoch predicted they would. We have also seen unusual activity in the sun. Solar flares and coronal mass ejections have been more frequent and powerful than normal. These events send charged particles streaming toward Earth, sometimes disrupting our communications and electrical systems. The sun, which is normally very stable, has been showing signs of unusual behavior. The moon has also displayed some interesting characteristics recently. There have been several blood moons, which occur when the Earth's shadow gives the moon a reddish appearance during a lunar eclipse. These events have often coincided with important religious holidays and significant world events, suggesting they may indeed be signs from heaven. Astronomers have discovered many new objects in our solar system and beyond. They have found planets orbiting other stars, some of which might be capable of supporting life. They have observed distant galaxies and black holes that behave in surprising ways. The universe has turned out to be far stranger and more wonderful than anyone expected. At the same time, we have seen increases in meteor showers and fireballs in the sky. More space rocks seem to be entering our atmosphere than usual, creating bright streaks of light as they burn up. While most of these are small and harmless, they remind us that we live in a cosmic shooting gallery where larger impacts are always possible. Space agencies around the world have been tracking asteroids and comets that come close to Earth. They have identified several large objects that will make close approaches in the coming years. While the risk of impact is considered low, the fact that we are paying so much attention to these celestial visitors suggests that people sense something significant may be about to happen. The northern and southern lights, also known as auroras, have been appearing in places where they are not normally seen. These beautiful displays of colored light in the sky are caused by charged particles from the sun interacting with our planet's magnetic field. When they appear far from the polar regions, it often indicates that the sun is particularly active. Modern technology has allowed us to observe the heavens in ways that Enoch could never have imagined. We can see deep into space and detect events that happened billions of years ago. We can monitor the sun constantly and predict space weather that might affect our planet. We can track objects throughout our solar system with great precision. But despite all our advanced knowledge, we are still learning that the universe is full of mysteries. Strange signals from deep space, unexpected behavior by nearby stars, and discoveries of new types of celestial objects remind us that we do not understand everything about the cosmos. There are still many secrets hidden in the heavens. According to Enoch's visions, the celestial signs would become more frequent and more dramatic as the end times approached. We would see things in the sky that had never been observed before. The normal patterns that had governed the heavens for thousands of years would begin to change. These changes would signal that God was preparing to intervene in human history once again. One of the most significant signs that Enoch described was the appearance of a great star or light in the sky. This would be different from any normal celestial object. It would be brighter than anything else in the heavens and would be visible to people all over the earth. When this sign appeared, it would mean that the time of God's final judgment was very near. Enoch also saw that there would be disturbances in the regular movements of the sun and moon. The sun might appear to stand still in the sky or move in an unusual direction. The moon might change color or seem to disappear completely. These events would cause great fear among the people of the earth, but they would also serve as final warnings to prepare for what was coming. The ancient prophet witnessed times when the stars themselves would seem to fall from the sky. This might refer to meteor showers so intense that they would look like the stars were abandoning their positions. Or it might describe some other cosmic event that would be so spectacular that it would appear as if the very structure of the heavens was breaking apart. As we observe the signs in the heavens during 2024, we should remember Enoch's teachings about their meaning. These are not random events or mere coincidences. They are messages from God, written across the sky for those who have eyes to see and hearts to understand. They are calling us to pay attention to the times we are living in and to prepare for what lies ahead. Chapter 6. When trouble fills the earth. In his visions of the future, Enoch saw a time of great trouble coming upon the earth. This would not be just ordinary difficulties that people had always faced. This would be a period of suffering and chaos, unlike anything that had ever happened before. He called this time the Great Tribulation, and he saw that it would test every person alive during those days. Enoch witnessed how this time of trouble would begin gradually, like a storm that starts with a few drops of rain, but eventually becomes a hurricane. At first, people would notice that things were not quite right. Problems that used to be manageable would become more serious. Solutions that had worked in the past would stop working. Life would become more difficult and uncertain. The prophet saw that during this time, people would lose trust in their leaders and institutions. Governments that had been stable for many years would become weak and unable to solve their people's problems. Economic systems that had provided prosperity would begin to fail. Even religious organizations would lose their ability to give people hope and guidance. In his visions, Enoch observed how fear would spread across the earth like a plague. People would be afraid of many things that they had never worried about before. They would fear for their safety, their future, their children, and their way of life. This fear would make them desperate and willing to accept solutions that they would normally reject. Enoch saw that during the Great Tribulation, there would be widespread food shortages. Crops would fail in many parts of the world due to bad weather, diseases, and conflicts. The systems that transport food from farms to cities would break down. Many people who had never been hungry would discover what it means to not have enough to eat. The ancient prophet witnessed severe water shortages as well. Rivers and lakes would dry up or become polluted. Wells that had provided water for generations would run dry. Clean drinking water would become more valuable than gold. People would fight wars over access to water sources. In Enoch's visions of this troubling time, he saw great movements of people from one place to another. Millions would be forced to leave their homes because of wars, disasters, or economic collapse. These refugees would wander the earth looking for safety and a place to rebuild their lives. Their movements would create conflicts with the people who were already living in the places they wanted to go. The prophet observed that during the Great Tribulation, diseases would spread rapidly around the world. These illnesses would be more dangerous than the plagues of the past because people would be weakened by hunger and stress. Medical systems would be overwhelmed and unable to care for all the sick people. Many would die not just from disease, but from lack of treatment. Enoch saw that communication systems would become unreliable during this time of trouble. The networks that people depended on to stay in touch with each other and get information would often fail. This would increase confusion and make it harder for communities to organize effective responses to the crises they faced. In his visions, the ancient prophet witnessed the breakdown of law and order in many places. Police and military forces would be unable to maintain peace as crime and violence increased. People would take justice into their own hands, leading to more chaos and bloodshed. Cities that had been safe for decades would become dangerous places where people were afraid to go out at night. Enoch saw that traditional values and moral standards would collapse during the Great Tribulation. People would abandon the principles that had guided their ancestors for thousands of years. What had always been considered right would be called wrong, and what had been considered wrong would be celebrated as good. This moral confusion would add to the chaos and suffering. The prophet observed how families would be torn apart during this difficult time. Parents and children would turn against each other. Husbands and wives would betray each other. Brothers and sisters would become enemies. The bonds that had held society together would dissolve, leaving individuals isolated and vulnerable. In Enoch's visions, he saw that education systems would fail to prepare people for the challenges they would face. Schools and universities would continue teaching as if the world had not changed, leaving their students without the knowledge and skills they needed to survive in the new reality. Much of what was taught would be irrelevant or even harmful. The ancient prophet witnessed the rise of false leaders during the Great Tribulation. These individuals would promise easy solutions to complex problems. They would gain power by telling people what they wanted to hear rather than what they needed to know. They would use the crisis to increase their own power and wealth, while the people they claimed to serve continued to suffer. Enoch saw that technology, which many people thought would solve all their problems, would actually make some aspects of the tribulation worse. The same systems that made life easier in good times would become sources of control and oppression in bad times. People would discover that their dependence on technology had made them vulnerable in ways they had never imagined. In his visions of this troubling period, the prophet observed that many people would lose their faith in God. They would ask why a loving creator would allow such terrible things to happen. They would conclude that either God did not exist or that he did not care about human suffering. This spiritual crisis would be just as devastating as the physical hardships. But Enoch also saw that the Great Tribulation would have a purpose. It would separate those who truly trusted in God from those who only claimed to believe when life was easy. It would test people's character and reveal who they really were inside. It would purify the faithful like gold is purified in fire. The prophet witnessed that during this time of testing, some people would discover strengths they never knew they had. They would learn to depend on God in ways they had never done before. They would develop deeper relationships with other believers as they supported each other through the difficulties. They would find joy and peace even in the midst of suffering. Enoch saw that the Great Tribulation would not last forever. Just when it seemed that all hope was lost, God would intervene to rescue his people. The suffering would come to an end, and a new age of peace and prosperity would begin. Those who had remained faithful during the dark times would be rewarded for their perseverance. As we look at the world in 2024, we can see many signs that suggest we may be entering the time of trouble that Enoch described. Political systems around the world are becoming unstable. Economic inequality is increasing. Social tensions are rising. Natural disasters are becoming more frequent and severe. Many of the conditions that Enoch saw in his visions are beginning to manifest in our time. The question is not whether difficult times are coming, but how we will respond to them when they arrive. Will we panic and lose our faith, or will we trust in God's plan and purpose? Will we turn against each other, or will we support and encourage one another? Will we give up hope, or will we remember that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn? Enoch's visions remind us that the Great Tribulation, as terrible as it will be, is not the end of the story. It is actually the beginning of something wonderful. The suffering and chaos are like the birth pains that a woman experiences before bringing new life into the world. They are difficult, but necessary for what comes after. Those who understand Enoch's prophecies about the Great Tribulation have an advantage over those who are unprepared. They know what to expect and can make preparations both physically and spiritually. They can store food and supplies, but more importantly, they can strengthen their faith and their relationships with other believers. They can prepare their hearts and minds for the challenges ahead. The time of trouble that Enoch saw will test every aspect of human civilization. It will reveal the weaknesses in our systems and the flaws in our thinking. But it will also provide opportunities for those who are prepared to help others and to demonstrate the power of faith, hope, and love in the darkest of times. Chapter 7. When Nature Turns Against Humanity. One of the most frightening aspects of Enoch's visions was what he saw happening to the natural world during the end times. The earth itself would seem to rebel against humanity. The weather patterns that had been stable for thousands of years would become chaotic and destructive. Natural disasters would increase in both frequency and intensity, causing widespread damage and loss of life. Enoch witnessed earthquakes that would be more powerful than any that had ever been recorded. He saw the ground opening up and swallowing entire cities. Mountains would crumble and fall into the sea. The very foundations of the earth would shake, as if the planet itself was experiencing a terrible fever. These earthquakes would strike without warning and cause destruction that would take decades to repair. The ancient prophet observed massive floods that would cover vast areas of land. Rivers would overflow their banks and destroy everything in their path. Coastal cities would be swept away by giant waves from the ocean. Rain would fall so heavily and for such long periods that the ground could not absorb it all. Entire regions that had been dry for centuries would be underwater. In his visions, Enoch saw droughts that would last for years. Areas that had once been green and fertile would become deserts. Crops would fail year after year, leading to widespread famine. Wells and springs that had provided water for generations would dry up completely. The lack of rain would turn once prosperous farmland into dusty wastelands. Enoch witnessed violent storms, unlike anything people had ever experienced. These storms would have winds strong enough to destroy the strongest buildings. Hailstones as large as rocks would fall from the sky, damaging crops and injuring people and animals. Lightning would strike so frequently that the night would seem like day. The thunder would be so loud that it would shake buildings and terrify everyone who heard it. The prophet saw extreme temperatures that would make life very difficult. In some places, the heat would become so intense that people would not be able to work outside during the day. The sun would seem to burn hotter than it ever had before. In other places, the cold would be so severe that crops would freeze and people would struggle to stay warm even with fires and heavy clothing. In Enoch's visions of natural disasters, He observed volcanic eruptions that would darken the sky with ash and smoke. These eruptions would be so massive that they would affect the weather around the entire world. The ash would block out the sun for weeks or months, making it difficult for plants to grow. The air would become hard to breathe, and many people would become sick from inhaling the volcanic particles. The ancient prophet witnessed changes in the behavior of animals that would signal coming disasters. Wild animals would leave their normal habitats and wander into areas where they had never been seen before. Domestic animals would become restless and afraid, as if they could sense something terrible approaching. Birds would change their migration patterns, and fish would disappear from waters where they had lived for countless generations. Enoch saw that the seasons would become confused and unreliable. Spring would come too early or too late. Summer would be unusually cool, or winter would be unusually warm. Farmers would not know when to plant their crops because the weather patterns they had depended on for centuries would no longer be predictable. This would lead to crop failures and food shortages. In his visions, the prophet observed that forests would catch fire and burn for weeks or months. These fires would be so large and hot that they would create their own weather systems. Entire ecosystems that had taken centuries to develop would be destroyed in a matter of days. The smoke from these fires would travel around the world, affecting air quality in places thousands of miles away. Enoch witnessed insect plagues that would destroy crops and spread disease. Swarms of locusts, beetles, and other pests would appear in numbers that had never been seen before. They would eat every green thing in their path, leaving behind barren landscapes. Some of these insects would carry diseases that would make both people and animals very sick. The ancient prophet saw changes in the oceans that would affect the entire planet. The sea levels would rise, flooding coastal areas where millions of people lived. Ocean currents that had flowed in the same patterns for thousands of years would shift, changing weather patterns around the world. The water in some areas would become so polluted that fish could not survive in it. In Enoch's visions, he observed that the soil itself would become less fertile. Crops that had grown easily for generations would struggle to produce food. Farmers would have to work much harder to grow the same amount of food, and in many cases, they would not be successful at all. The earth would seem tired and worn out, as if it was no longer willing or able to support human life as it once had. The prophet witnessed contamination of water sources that would make them unsafe to drink. Rivers, lakes, and underground water supplies would become polluted with chemicals and waste that would make people sick. Clean water would become very scarce and expensive. Many people would have to travel long distances to find water that was safe for their families to drink. Enoch saw that the air would become unhealthy to breathe in many places. Pollution from human activities, combined with smoke from fires and ash from volcanoes, would make the atmosphere thick and dirty. People would develop breathing problems and other health issues. In some cities, the air would be so bad that people would have to cover their faces when they went outside. In his visions of environmental chaos, the ancient prophet observed that many species of plants and animals would disappear forever. Forests that had existed for thousands of years would die. Animals that had lived in certain areas for countless generations would no longer be found there. The diversity of life on Earth would be greatly reduced, making the planet a less beautiful and less stable place. As we examine the world in 2024, we can see many signs that match what Enoch saw in his visions. Earthquakes are indeed becoming more frequent and more destructive. Climate change is causing extreme weather events that break historical records. Floods and droughts are affecting millions of people around the world. Wildfires are burning larger areas and destroying more property than ever before. Scientists are documenting rapid changes in ocean temperatures and currents. Ice caps and glaciers are melting at unprecedented rates, contributing to rising sea levels. Many species of plants and animals are becoming extinct much faster than they have in the past. Air and water pollution continue to be serious problems in many parts of the world. The increase in natural disasters is putting enormous strain on emergency response systems and insurance companies. Governments are spending billions of dollars trying to repair damage and prepare for future disasters. Many communities that have been rebuilt after one disaster are hit by another before they have fully recovered from the first one. Modern technology allows us to predict some natural disasters better than people could in the past, but it also shows us how vulnerable our complex systems are to disruption. When earthquakes damage power plants, when floods destroy communication networks, or when storms interrupt transportation systems, the effects can spread far beyond the immediate disaster area. Enoch's visions suggest that these natural disasters are not random events, but are part of a pattern that will intensify as we approach the end times. The earth itself is responding to the spiritual condition of humanity. As people move further away from God and His laws, the natural world becomes less stable and more dangerous. The ancient prophet saw that these environmental challenges would serve several purposes. They would humble human pride by showing that we are not as powerful as we think we are. They would force people to work together and help each other in times of crisis. They would remind us that we are dependent on forces beyond our control for our survival. But Enoch also saw that those who trusted in God would be protected during these difficult times. They might not be spared from all hardship, but they would have the strength and wisdom to endure whatever came their way. They would find ways to adapt to the changing conditions and help others do the same. The environmental chaos that Enoch described would eventually come to an end when God established His kingdom on earth. The natural world would be restored to its original beauty and stability. The disasters and pollution would be cleaned up, and the earth would once again be a paradise where humans and nature could live in harmony. Understanding Enoch's prophecies about natural disasters can help us prepare both practically and spiritually for what may be coming. We can take steps to make our homes and communities more resilient. We can learn skills that will help us survive in difficult conditions. Most importantly, we can strengthen our faith so that we will not lose hope when the world around us seems to be falling apart. Chapter 8. The War Nobody Can See. One of the most important things that Enoch learned during his time in heaven was that there is a great war taking place that most people cannot see. This is not a war between human armies fighting with guns and tanks. This is a spiritual war between the forces of good and evil, between God's angels and Satan's demons. This invisible battle affects everything that happens in the visible world. Enoch discovered that every person on earth is involved in this spiritual war, whether they know it or not. Every choice between right and wrong is actually a choice about which side to support in this cosmic conflict. When people choose to be honest, kind, and loving, they are helping the forces of good. When they choose to lie, hurt others, or be selfish, they are helping the forces of evil. The ancient prophet learned that the leader of the evil forces is Satan, who was once one of God's most beautiful and powerful angels. Satan rebelled against God because he wanted to be worshipped like God was. When he was cast out of heaven, he took many other angels with him. These fallen angels became demons, whose job is to tempt humans to sin and turn away from God. In his visions of the future, Enoch saw that this spiritual war would become more intense as the end times approached. The battle between good and evil would no longer be hidden, but would become obvious to everyone. People would be forced to choose sides clearly. There would be no middle ground where someone could avoid getting involved in the conflict. Enoch witnessed how Satan would use many different strategies to win this war. Sometimes he would work through powerful political leaders, convincing them to make laws that went against God's commandments. Sometimes he would work through false teachers who would twist religious teachings to confuse people about what was true. Sometimes he would work through popular culture to make sin seem attractive and normal. The prophet saw that one of Satan's most effective weapons would be deception. He would convince people that good was evil and evil was good. He would make lies seem like truth and truth seem like lies. He would promote ideas that sounded wise but were actually foolish. Many people would be led astray because they could not tell the difference between right and wrong anymore. In Enoch's visions, he observed that Satan would also use fear as a weapon. He would create situations that would make people so afraid that they would be willing to give up their freedom and their values in exchange for safety and security. They would accept leadership from anyone who promised to protect them, even if that leader was working for the forces of evil. The ancient prophets saw that technology would play an important role in the spiritual war of the end times. The same inventions that could be used to help people and spread good news could also be used to spy on people and spread lies. Satan would use modern communication systems to reach more people than ever before with his deceptive messages. Enoch witnessed how the forces of evil would try to unite the entire world under one system that would oppose God. This would not happen all at once, but would develop gradually over many years. International organizations, global businesses, and worldwide communication networks would all be used to create a system where it would be very difficult for people to live according to God's laws. In his visions of the spiritual battle, the prophet saw that many people who claimed to be religious would actually be working for Satan without realizing it. They would use the name of God to promote ideas that went against what God actually taught. They would perform religious ceremonies, but their hearts would be far from the truth. They would lead many sincere people astray. Enoch observed that the forces of evil would particularly target children and young people. They would use education, entertainment, and social pressure to teach young minds that there was no God, or that God's laws were old-fashioned and irrelevant. They would encourage rebellion against parents and traditional values. They would promote lifestyles that would harm both individuals and society. The ancient prophets saw that family relationships would become a major battlefield in the spiritual war. Satan would work to destroy marriages and break up families because he knew that strong families were one of God's most important institutions for teaching righteousness. Divorce would become common, and many children would grow up without the guidance and protection that stable homes provide. In Enoch's visions, he witnessed that the forces of evil would promote confusion about basic truths that had been understood for thousands of years. They would convince people that there was no such thing as absolute right and wrong. They would teach that everyone should decide for themselves what was moral. This would lead to chaos as people made up their own rules about how to live. The prophet saw that Satan would use economic systems as weapons in the spiritual war. He would create situations where it would be very difficult for people to make a living unless they participated in activities that went against their conscience. People would be forced to choose between feeding their families and obeying God's commandments. Enoch observed that the entertainment industry would become a major tool for spreading evil influence. Movies, music, books, and games would gradually introduce people to ideas and behaviors that would have shocked earlier generations. This process would happen so slowly that most people would not notice how their thinking was being changed. In his visions of the spiritual battle, the ancient prophet saw that many people would become addicted to various substances and behaviors that would make them easy targets for demonic influence. These addictions would not only harm the individuals involved, but would also destroy their relationships and their ability to make good decisions. But Enoch also saw the forces of good fighting back in this spiritual war. God's angels were working constantly to protect righteous people and to give them strength to resist temptation. The Holy Spirit was convicting people of sin and drawing them toward truth. Faithful believers were praying and sharing the good news about salvation through faith in God. The prophet witnessed that even when circumstances looked hopeless, God was still in control of the ultimate outcome of the war. Satan might win some battles, but he could not win the war itself. God had already determined that good would triumph over evil in the end. The question was not whether God would win, but how many people would choose to be on his side when the final victory came. Enoch saw that those who understood the reality of the spiritual war had a great advantage over those who did not. They could recognize when they were being attacked spiritually. They could use prayer, Bible study, and fellowship with other believers as weapons against the forces of evil. They could avoid many of the traps that Satan set for those who were unaware of his schemes. In his visions, the ancient prophet observed that the spiritual war would reach its climax during the Great Tribulation. At that time, the forces of evil would make their final attempt to defeat God and his people. But their apparent victory would be short-lived. God would intervene directly to end the conflict and establish his kingdom on earth. As we look at the world in 2024, we can see evidence of this spiritual war all around us. Traditional values are under attack in many places. Religious freedom is being restricted in some countries. Children are being taught ideas that contradict what their parents and grandparents believed. Technology is being used to monitor and control people's behavior in ways that would have seemed impossible just a few years ago. Understanding Enoch's teachings about the spiritual war can help us make sense of what is happening in our world. The conflicts and chaos we see are not just random events or the result of human politics and economics. They are manifestations of the cosmic battle between good and evil that has been going on since Satan first rebelled against God. This knowledge should not make us fearful or discouraged. Instead, it should motivate us to choose our side carefully and to fight effectively for what is right. We have powerful spiritual weapons available to us through prayer, faith, and obedience to God's word. We can make a difference in this war by the choices we make every day. The most important thing to remember about the spiritual war is that God has already won the ultimate victory through the sacrifice of his Son. Satan's power is real but limited. His time is running out. Those who put their faith in God's promises will be on the winning side when the final battle is over and the war comes to an end. Chapter 9. The day when everything changes. In all of Enoch's visions, none was more awesome and terrifying than what he saw about the final judgment. This would be the day when God would finally settle all accounts. Every person who had ever lived would stand before the Creator and give an explanation for how they had lived their lives. It would be the most important day in the history of the world. Enoch saw that this day of judgment would not come without warning. There would be many signs that would let people know it was approaching. The natural disasters, wars, and spiritual conflicts that we have already discussed would all increase in intensity. It would be like the contractions a woman experiences before giving birth. They would become stronger and closer together as the final moment approached. The ancient prophet witnessed the return of a great heavenly being who would come to execute God's judgment on the earth. This being would appear in the sky with great power and glory, accompanied by countless angels. His appearance would be so bright that it would be visible to every person on earth at the same time. No one would be able to ignore or deny what was happening. In his visions, Enoch saw that when this great being appeared, all human activity would stop immediately. People would be so overwhelmed by what they were seeing that they would not be able to continue with their normal daily activities. Everyone would know instinctively that they were witnessing something supernatural and momentous. The prophet observed that the earth itself would react to the presence of this divine judge. Mountains would shake and crumble, the sea would roar, and waves would reach heights that had never been seen before. The sky would be filled with strange lights and colors. It would be clear that the normal laws of nature were being suspended for this extraordinary event. Enoch witnessed the resurrection of all the people who had died throughout history. Graves would open, and the dead would come back to life to face judgment. This would include both the righteous and the wicked. No one who had ever lived would escape this appointment with divine justice. Death would not be able to hide anyone from God's judgment. In his visions of the final judgment, the ancient prophet saw that everyone would appear before a great white throne where the judge would be seated. The atmosphere would be one of absolute solemnity and reverence. There would be no joking, arguing, or casual conversation. Everyone would understand that they were in the presence of perfect holiness and justice. Enoch observed that books would be opened containing records of everything that every person had ever done, said, or thought. Nothing would be hidden or forgotten. Every act of kindness and every cruel deed would be recorded. Every truthful statement and every lie would be documented. Every moment of faith and every instance of rebellion would be noted. The prophet saw that people would be judged not only by their actions, but also by their motivations. God would look at the hearts of people and see why they did what they did. Someone who appeared to be good on the outside but was selfish on the inside would not be able to hide their true character. Someone who seemed flawed on the outside but had a sincere heart would be judged according to their genuine intentions. In Enoch's visions, he witnessed that some people would try to argue with the judge about their punishment. They would claim that they had not been as bad as others, or that they had done many good things, but their arguments would be answered by the evidence in the books. Every excuse would be proven false by the complete record of their lives. The ancient prophet saw that there would be two different outcomes for the people being judged. Those who had lived righteous lives and trusted in God's mercy would be welcomed into eternal life. They would receive rewards that were greater than anything they could have imagined. Their joy would be complete and would last forever. But Enoch also saw the terrible fate that awaited those who had rejected God and lived for themselves. They would be sentenced to eternal punishment in a place of fire and darkness. Their anguish would be as complete as the joy of the righteous, but it would never end. They would have forever to regret the choices they had made during their brief time on earth. The prophet observed that the punishment of the wicked would not be uniform. Those who had committed worse sins and led others astray would receive harsher judgment than those who had simply been indifferent to God. The judge would be perfectly fair, giving each person exactly what their deeds deserved. No one would be able to complain that their sentence was unjust. In his visions of the final judgment, Enoch saw that the fallen angels who had rebelled against God would also face their punishment at this time. These spiritual beings who had corrupted humanity and caused so much suffering would be thrown into eternal fire. Their rebellion, which had lasted for thousands of years, would finally come to an end. The ancient prophet witnessed the destruction of the old earth and heavens, which had been contaminated by sin and rebellion. Everything that existed in the current universe would be burned up and destroyed. It would be like a farmer burning weeds and stubble to prepare a field for new crops. The old order would pass away completely. But Enoch also saw something wonderful beyond the destruction. After the old universe was destroyed, God would create a new heaven and a new earth. This new creation would be perfect, with no sin, suffering, or death. The righteous who had been saved would live there forever in perfect happiness and peace. In his visions, the prophet saw that in the new earth there would be no more wars, crimes, or conflicts of any kind. People would live in harmony with each other and with nature. There would be no sickness, aging, or death. Everyone would have meaningful work to do, but no one would ever get tired or discouraged. It would be paradise restored and made even better than it had been in the beginning. Enoch observed that in the new creation, people would have direct access to God. They would be able to see Him face to face and talk with Him personally. The relationship between Creator and creation that had been broken by sin would be fully restored. This would be the greatest joy of all for those who had remained faithful during their time on earth. The ancient prophet saw that time itself would be different in the new creation. There would be no more aging or decay. The cycle of birth and death that had characterized life on the old earth would be finished. Those who entered the new creation would live forever in bodies that would never wear out or become sick. In Enoch's visions of the final judgment and what came after, he understood that this was the goal toward which all of history was moving. Everything that happened on earth, whether good or bad, was part of God's plan to separate those who truly loved Him from those who only cared about themselves. The judgment was not the end, but the beginning of eternity. As we consider these visions in light of current events in 2024, we can see that many of the signs Enoch described are already occurring. The world seems to be moving towards some kind of climax. Political, social, and environmental problems are reaching crisis levels. Many people sense that major changes are coming, even if they do not understand what those changes will be. Understanding Enoch's prophecies about the final judgment should motivate us to examine our own lives carefully. Are we ready to stand before a holy God and give an account of how we have lived? Have we accepted God's offer of forgiveness and salvation? Are we living in a way that pleases Him? Or are we focused only on our own desires and ambitions? The final judgment is not something to fear if we have made peace with God. For those who have trusted in His mercy and tried to live according to His will, it will be a day of vindication and reward. They will finally receive the recognition and blessings that may have been denied to them during their earthly lives. But for those who have ignored or rejected God, the final judgment will be a day of terror and regret. They will realize too late that the things they thought were important were actually worthless. They will understand that they traded eternal joy for temporary pleasures. They will wish they could have another chance to make different choices, but it will be too late. The good news is that it is not too late right now. As long as we are still alive, we still have the opportunity to prepare for the final judgment. We can confess our sins, ask for forgiveness, and commit our lives to serving God instead of ourselves. We can begin living in a way that will make us ready to meet our Creator with confidence instead of fear. Chapter 10. Light after the darkness. After showing Enoch all the terrible things that would happen during the end times, God made sure that the ancient prophet also saw what would come after the darkness. The story did not end with judgment and destruction. Beyond all the trouble and suffering was a glorious future that would make all the pain worth enduring. This was the message of hope that Enoch was meant to share with future generations. In his final visions, Enoch saw the establishment of God's kingdom on earth. This would not be like any human government that had ever existed. It would be ruled by perfect justice and unlimited love. There would be no corruption, no favoritism, and no mistakes. Every decision would be made with wisdom that came directly from heaven. The ancient prophet witnessed the restoration of the earth to its original beauty and perfection. All the damage that had been done by sin, war, and natural disasters would be completely healed. Polluted rivers would run clean. Barren deserts would bloom with flowers. Extinct animals would be brought back to life. The planet would become more beautiful than it had ever been before. Enoch saw that in God's kingdom there would be no more poverty or hunger. Everyone would have everything they needed to live comfortably and happily. There would be plenty of food for all, and no one would have to worry about where their next meal would come from. The inequality and injustice that had plagued human societies for thousands of years would be eliminated completely. In his visions of the restored world, the prophet observed that all diseases and disabilities would be healed. People who had been blind would see perfectly. Those who had been unable to walk would run and jump with joy. Mental illnesses that had caused so much suffering would be cured instantly. Everyone would enjoy perfect health and boundless energy.